Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to our audience who are joining us from different parts of the world who have been different time zone as well. And welcome to CKS webinar and that which is live on Facebook as well. So happy Lunar New Year to those who celebrated early this week. As always, our webinar is being recorded and live streamed on CKS Facebook page. The recorded video will be made available to our website, social media, and YouTube channel later. My name is Samdi. I'm the Deputy Director at the Center for Khmer Study. Most of you may have known CKS already, but for those who are new to it, Center for Khmer Study, or CKS, is a non-profit and non-governmental organization working to promote research, teaching, and public services in social sciences, art, and humanity in Cambodia and the Mekong region. Our headquarters is located in Wat Dong in Siem Reap, where you can access our library resource for free from Monday to Saturday, and our second office is in Phnom Penh. You will meet me during this 1 hour and a half webinar as a moderator. The title of our webinar today is Juggling Between Modernity and the Spirit of the Forest Microfinance in Land in Highland of Cambodia, which will be presented by our Cambodian dissertation research fellow, Cashew, who is a fourth-year PhD candidate in social anthropology at Université Paris, France. You may find her detailed bio on CKS website as well. We will commence the webinar with a presentation by Ms. Rez, then continue with some Q&A from me and also from our audience who are joining us on two channels. For our audience on Zoom, please leave your questions on the Q&A box, and those who are watching via live Facebook, you can post your question in the comment box. We will address all the questions from all of you after the presentation is completed. Without further ado, I'm pleased to invite our presenter, Ms. Pasires, to take the floor. The floor is yours right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Samadi, for the introduction. So first, let me go to my slide. Sorry. Just a few words. I'd like to thank CKS for providing me the grant to do my PhD fieldwork. So this preliminary finding, the presentation of my preliminary finding is part of my PhD fieldwork, and my PhD topic is looking at the relationship between the link between microfinance expansions and land. And I decided to focus it in the highland province of Cambodia. So here are some content I'm going to present today. The objective of this research is to explore how the expansion of formal financial institutions, microfinance institutions, and banks, how has it impacted or shaped the social, cultural, and economic lives of the indigenous households who rely on land beyond a means of production. And within that objective, I will also try to unfold the process of debt collections. And the other objective is trying to understand the cultural aspects of debt. So here are
just
some
one thing. Sorry, Apasi, we do not see your slide. Just click on screen sharing again.
Sorry. Good.
Okay, so maybe put in the full screen.
Is it full screen for me?
Here's the button. Yeah. Okay, see you now.
How can I remove this video? Okay. Can you see? Okay. I cannot see it. Anyway. So these are the the text or ethnography that I'm on the highland that I'm looking at. So I was hoping that this ethnography would give me some idea what was like during that time and how is dead was understood, how is dead is being talked about and presented, and also looking to see how the borrowing and lending practices was what was like during that time. And apart from the ethnography on specifically on the highland of Cambodia and some parts in Vietnam, also looking at ethnography in other countries who also captures the transformation that happening in the highlands, but in other Southeast Asian regions, or still looking at specifically the link, the relationship between debt and land. So these give me some base understanding of what happening and like some comparative perspective of what I found on the ground. And for my part, I got to talk with 167 households. Among the 167 households, 69% were men and 28% were, 69% were women, 28 were men, and about around 3% they were talking as a couple. And apart from that, I got to witness is how financial institutions interact with indigenous households in terms of their debt collections activities, and also got to participate in social and cultural activity in the village, such as marriage, funerals, conflict resolutions, procedures, and also got to observe and participate in the activities of the Christian missionaries. So before presenting, I would like you to keep in things that I would like you to keep in mind are the understanding and the interpretations that I'm about to present are not static, because the community that I study, in a word, they are, in a word of Scott, on the motions. These including the ethnic identity, the social relations with land, the belief system, agricultural techniques, agricultural right, social organizations, spatial arrangement, kinship system, labor relations, or mutual aid can be adapted to accommodate a new way of living under a new economic systems. So in the next few slides, I'm attempt to explain the transformation that has happened in the highland in terms of their land tenure systems. So prior to me entering the fieldwork, this the land tenure system as common and open access is more common. So I will explain in brief through this like simple graph, like simple draw that I draw. So let us imagine that the red circle is the customary boundary, and inside that red circle is a village or a lineage groups or family groups who live and farm together. So a family can go, let's say, to clear the plot one of the forest, and they can farm it for a few years. And then when the land is become less fertile, they can move to, just let's say they move to plot 2. When they move to plot 2, they don't have the ownership of plot 1. So this plot 1 are open to any other families. They can come and clear this plot for farming. When the forest regrows and it become a fallow, others can get access to this resource and they can continue to move to the next plot, and it's like that. So the point that I'm trying to convey is that the land was not governed by a system of private property in the Western sense, instead by the customary boundary of the place-based spirit. For example, when the customary boundary was being disrespected, it was not the violations of the private property per se, but it could invoke angers among the place-based spirits. So in return, they could send sickness, heavy rain, drought, and strong storm upon the inhabitants of both villages. The thing is, because in order to occupy a piece of land to live on, or a piece of land to farm on as a community, the relationship must be established between the human realm, the living, and the invisible world. And the permissions need to be asked from the invisible world. And one way to ask the permission is through a jar of rice wine or rice beer and a chicken, cooked chickens. And approval or disapproval will be sent through dreams or signs, and or both. And the relationship between the invisible world must be maintained. So that's what I refer to when I say the land was governed by the customary boundary of the place-based spirit. So because the inhabitor that occupied a particular piece of land to live on, to farm on, they have built social relation with the landscape itself. So when someone else who don't have this relation, who come to farm on this piece of land without prior relation to the landscape, then it can evoke anger among the spirits, and it can cause sickness and others disasters. So I will talk a few words about how the living maintain their relationship with the invisible world. So first, the spirit must be informed of the event in the village, such as marriage or death. So in this picture, it's taken at the marriage ceremonies, where the elderlies of the village, if you can see the picture, they have the stick. It's made from bamboo, and in order to evoke the spirit and inform them of this marriage ceremony, you can tap in the mouth of the jars, and that's how you evoke the spirit, and you call their name and you inform them, and then you call them to come and to consume the alcohol and food with you. And the same thing with the agricultural right, from growing until the grain is being put in the granaries. So the ceremony have to perform before you can eat the grain, like the grain of the rice. And you have to appease the spirit when the taboo was being broken or the dead was being disturbed, for example, incest or farm on the burial grounds. Now I'm going to explain how does the notions of private property slowly come to the highlands. So the customary boundary of place-based spirit as a way to govern land and natural resources on a diminishing slope with the cultivation of cashew nuts and the 2001 land laws. 2001 land law allows state to territorialize the forest land and give it to, for example, they can give it to the concession company. And it's also blocked highlanders' choices to common and open. So now with this law, the choice to common and open is no longer there. So instead, under this law, they have two choices. They can opt for private individual or private commons. Private common is also known as communal land titling, where a community can claim a piece of land together and put a common boundary. But this is not like it's different from this customary boundary of place-based spirit, where it's open. Although they have the common boundary, but inside this communal land title, everyone know where it's no longer open. So just a few words on the process of the communal land titling. I'm not going into detail on this, although the law was established in 2001, but it has only started around 2009. And the process itself is long, costly, and often it did not respect the customary boundary of place-based spirit. And there was some community who dismissed this communal land title and opt for private individual instead. You can see more in Leman and Bourbon. So the cultivation of cashew nuts, so on one hand, you have 2001 land law under this legal framework, you have only two choices between private common and private individual. And on the other hand, you have the cultivation of cashew nuts. And the cultivation of the cashew nut allows the highlanders to experience and to make sense of the notions of private properties. Cashew plant, it's very easy to grow on this red fertile soil, require little capital and labors. Cashew plant also allow the plant owner to exclude other cultivator and even the forest spirit to occupy this piece of land. Cashew plant also allow the plant owners to use it as a proof of ownership, so that they can legally claim the piece of land from the state, either as a private individual or as a private common. And just want to note that the intensification of the cashew nut cultivation has started around 2006. And there were probably two drivers that encourage more highlanders to start to grow more cashew nut. So one is cashew nut was on a boom, and second is driven by a land insecurity induced by economic land concession policies. So now they have to also compete for this piece of land. One way to compete for this, the land is to convert the swidden or fallow into a cashew field. So like I mentioned before, because I'm looking at the link between microfinance expansion and land, so in this I'm going to also talk about the arrivals of the microfinance in Ratanakiri and how it's expanded. So the first bank that arrived in Ratanakiri is Esilida, was established in 2006. However, among my participants, except village 3 has it's exposed to the formal credit much later. So the first loan was taken between 2009 and 2014 with the amount of between 50 to 100 USDs. And the rapid expansion has only been in the last 5 years, around 2017. And this is probably not a coincidence, because in the same years, the Cambodian government decided to put the interest cap to not exceed 18%. So in order to maintain the same levels of profit, they have to either increase the loan size or they have to look for a new place to expand their financial services. In order to expand the financial services, they also, I think the conditions of the local also need to support these expansions. And if we look at what's happening in Ratanakiri is, if we adopt the actor network theories of Latour, you got actors, you got resources and network. And in this case, there's the private property of land tenure is on the way, or in some part of Ratanakiri is already in place. And you have cash crop, expansion of formal educations, and commutable networking of roads. So the private property of land tenures bring monetary value to land, and also now land can be put as a collateral for the loan to get the loan from the banks or microfinance institutions. And cash crops, cashew, in this case cashew, cassava, soybean, and rubbers, bring monetary value to land and also provide a seasonal cash flow, and this can be used to justify the loan application itself. And the expansion of formal education. Now that ethnic minority youth can read and can write Khmer, they can be deployed and employed in the microfinance sectors as credit officers. And also the commutable networking of road and transportations bring monetary value to the land, and at the same time it make it a bit easier for the loan officers to conduct their sale or debt collections activities. So these four factors have to facilitate the expansions of the microfinance and bank services. So at the time of my fieldwork, these are the socioeconomic of my fields. So the notions of private property is no longer foreign or strange, even under the inside the communal land title where they have the common boundaries. It's very easy for people to go to the commune office and to ask for a soft titles and use it to put as a collateral for microfinance loan or bank loan. And acquiring that is a common way of living, and credit worthiness is important. Cash crops are replacing the subsistence swidden agricultures. So these are the socioeconomic conditions of my fieldwork. So now I'm just gonna share with you some basic statistics, so you have some ideas of the level of debt of my study villages. So in these three villages, you can see, so the village 1 and village 3, village 1 have received the communal land title certificate in 2017, and village 3 is on the final process of receiving certificate at the time of my fieldwork. And village 2 is holding individual titles. So as you can see, although village 1 and village 3 is holding communal land titles, but surprisingly, their level of debt was much higher than the village 2 that was holding individual titles. Just like I mentioned earlier, they have the common boundary of this piece of land, but inside, everyone can go and ask if they want soft title at the commune office and can use it as collateral, although in theory they were not supposed to be able to do that, but in practice it's not the case. And this, I'm gonna use the statistic to show the symbiosis between the formal and informal providers. So I think the claim that microfinance sectors often made is to provide a cheaper loan so that they can drive the informal provider who charge higher interest rate, like 40% or 50% per year. But in the village 1, that wasn't the case. It was the opposite what I found. But instead, the microfinance and bank and informal provider was coexisted, and they were kind of fit into each other very well, because in the scenario with the village 1, what I found with the village 1 was that when people were struggling to meet the debt obligations, they would turn to the informal provider and get some loan to repay off this debt with the MFI or bank. And They were even encouraged by, not just encouraged, was told or commanded by the credit officer to go to the informal source to get the money to repay the debt. And in return, now it's not difficult. Before the money supply of the informal provider may be faster to dry out, but now it won't be faster to dry out because it's not difficult for informal providers to just take out loan from MFI or bank to supplies. So it's like they borrow and to lend it out to, informal ways. So in this case that I'm trying to show is that they, instead of they're pushing each other out of the business, they're kind of symbiosis, like a they flourish together. And I thought it would be also interesting just to look at the average of the loan side from the MFI and versus against the formal providers. And in this case, the average loan from the informal providers is still much smaller. Even in the case I excluded the household with loan of higher than a loan amount of 10,000 USD and above. So just some quick statistic on land loss due to debt. In the village 1, 9 people revealed they have sold land to repay debt, and in the village 2, few people have sold land to repay the debt, and in the village 3, which is they exposed to the formal loan, the formal financial service quite late compared to village 1 and village 2. Village 3 only exposed to the formal financial loan from microfinance and bank only in the last 3 years. And none of my participants revealed to me they have sold land to repay the debt. But it's also important to note that the topics of land sale is very sensitive in the highlands, even more sensitive among those who are holding communal land titles. So this led us to discuss what it means to be indigenous. So what it means to be indigenous. Indigenous households are not supposed to sell land. Land is a cultural heritage, no land loss of identity. No land spirit are living. Indigenous people are spirit worshippers who practice swidden agricultures. So in the next 2 slides, attempt to illustrate through a case study of groups of borrowers who identify themselves as struggling to meet the debt obligation. And according to my observation, they were really struggling to meet the debt obligations. So in these communities, it's under the communal land title, and the community member was now like watching each other. They don't want other community member to continue to sell and to repay the debt. So now selling land has been framed or seen as illegal. You can't sell land, especially to outsiders. You can do the exchange land among the community members, but selling land, especially to outsiders, is seen as illegal by the community members. And through the communal land titles internal regulation as well. So now they start to enforce these internal regulations that they come together to form this regulation. And on one hand, they also have to deal, because now selling land to repay the debt is no longer the options. So then on the other hand, they have to deal with the MFI bank agents who daily pressure them in persons over a phone call to sell their personal belongings, properties, including land. And on top of that, there's a group of Christian missionaries who try to get them out of debt. But at the same time, this group of the struggling borrowers need to pledge an allegiance with the Christian God. So I'm gonna go explain in detail how the next two things work. So first I'm gonna go with my data to show to unfold the debt collection in detail process and what is that interactions like. So here the context is that when debt is approaching 30 days late or more. So I divide this into 3 strategies, but they are not necessary in orders. And the word soft strategy, hard strategy is in the word of loan officers whom I get to talk to. In Khmer, soft strategy means yuta sachtun, and hard strategy is yuta sakadau. So the soft strategy would contain persistence. So when take no as an answer, you call the borrowers to come and repay, and if that doesn't work, you go to the house and wait until you go to meet the borrower. If you don't meet the borrower, you go to meet the co-signers. In Khmer, we say Ratanakiri. Also try to collect the debt from the co-signers, and in turn, in this village, the co-signer was helping credit officer to pressure the borrower to repay the debt. And sometimes they appeal for sympathy. For example, if you do not repay, my salary would be deducted or I would be fired. And among my participants that I talked to, they feel sorry for the credit officer. I also feel bad when you are in that, I don't know, like I saw them coming, and it's quite difficult, the job of debt collection, and when it's like you're stuck in the distress situations on the borrower side. They were also distressed. The loan officer, they were also distressed. So yeah, it was difficult. And then the hard strategy would involve psychological terrorizing, personal attack. For example, what kind of man are you? And this shaming techniques has also been described in others places and in others texts. However, in the context of highlands, the shaming techniques was more appeal to the honors of men rather than women. Because men can speak Khmer more fluently than women. And this has made them the targeted point of talking or exposures to credit officers. And credit worthiness has become an important factor at the time of my research, because people don't want to be cut off from the future loan. And for example, they would throw out some sentence like your name will be blacklisted or your credit history will be bad. And talking to my participant, many people were scared of their name was being blacklisted. Sometimes they also throw legal threats, like bringing to the police post, commune office, bring to the court, threat to press a fraud charge against borrower under the criminal laws. And then when all of these things doesn't work, they will take some actions. So they would make borrowers sign contracts. And there was one case where a borrower had to sign the contract, which only gave him 2 days to try to find the monies. And in the contracts, it said, if you couldn't find the money to repay within 2 days, the collateral can be used to resolve the debt according to the law. So just like vague statement like that. And it was the same case. After the contract, he couldn't repay, and then they will engage local authorities like the commune chief or the the chief of the police post. So in this case, he got received a letter from the commune chief inviting him to meet at the commune office. He went to meet them at the commune office, and he felt that the commune chief wasn't really trying to be the mediator. Instead, they was sided with the microfinance agents, and he felt even more precious. And at the end, they managed to make him thumbprint on a piece of letter again. This time it said if he couldn't find the money to repay within 7 days, the local authorities can confiscate his collaterals and sell it to repay the debt. And sometimes another strategy is sometimes they come to visit the land to collateral, or they also seek land agents, trying to find the land agent to come and buy the collaterals. And in this case, since selling land to outsider was not possible anymore, so they, at the time of my research, the microfinance and bank agent trying to seek land agent among the community members who can buy or dispossess the land from other community members. And the other things that has been, the other thing that I like to highlight is the second element that I have shown earlier is like they have to pledge an allegiance with the Christian gods. So that has been part of the salvation projects of the Christian missionaries who seek to save or to get a group of the struggling borrowers out of debt. So how do they pledge an allegiance with the Christian God? So they have to sign the contracts with the Christian God, saying that no more borrowing until the current debt is repaid. And the second point is they have to consult with the Christian God when starting new business ventures or when carrying out any agricultural activities. So I'm just leave it here and move to, if you have any question related to this, you can ask me in the Q&A sessions. I would just move to the next thing that I would like to talk about is the cultural aspects of debt. I'm still like trying to, on my preliminary, like early stage of trying to understand this. So the idea of debt is to receive and to return. And debt can be in a form of meat, labors, or rice during the old days, were in the highland context, were less in a form of cash. And the conception of debt is intrinsic in the system of exchange and mutual aid itself. In the past, the concept of debt was to forge an alliance or to strengthen an existing alliance. For example, the exchanges of the buffalo sacrifice described in Condominas, where that was in a form of meat, and it was to forge an alliance between two lineage groups. So, however, the contemporary debt is more a form of extractive, I argue it is in more form of extractive capitalisms, which create a form of subordinations and dominations. And cash, restricted time frame, interest, and collaterals are key to its existence. So this has led to the increasing the level of wealth inequality and disparities among highlanders whose society were more egalitarian. So now I'm gonna just go quickly on, as my time is running out as well, to just show you how has debt shaped the culturalize of the community that I study. So I have seen that ritual and custom have been adapted to accommodate the contemporary form of debt into a current way of living, as cash has increasingly become the main medium of transactions and exchanges. For example, among the Cherai communities that I was with, I was told that before the second funeral rite, the gap between the first funeral and the second funeral rite was about 5 years, but now it has reduced to 2 years because to reduce the cost. Because the thing is, the bigger the gap, the more expensive it is, because just every month you have to bring food and drink to the dead. Although their physical appearance disappear, they still can consume and can eat just like the living. And now the second funeral rite is to break the connection between the dead and the living. So now they tell the dead that, okay, now you go and find food on your own. We won't give you any food. So now has reduced to 2 years instead of 5. And agricultural right has also reduced from 5 to 6 until the grain was being transported into the granary. Now some just do 1 or 2, just keep the main one. But I also see that the role of the pathogens as ritual and custom keepers, at least among the enemy's believer. Because the thing is, for example, when you try to adjust customs or some certain ritual, maybe if someone in your family got sick and they seek a medium and they were told that you didn't perform this and this. So in a way, it's like you try to adapt the ritual and customs, but at the same time, the sickness will try to, to push back that you have to keep this ritual and custom. Yeah. And at least, so the most financially costly ritual is the animal sacrifice for the sick or the enemy's believers. So this has made that has made Christianity more appealing and economically and financially, because when you enter Christianity, the first thing that you gave up is to stop sacrificing animals for the sick. That's all for now. If there's anything that is I explain is not clear, you can ask me more in Q&A session. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Percy, if I may. And I think that your presentation is very interesting and very insightful, and especially for those, for example, like me, who are not a researcher and also not the person who living in the highland area. I think this kind of the finding from your research is like eye-opening to understand the adaptedness of the people living in highland from the different aspects like finance and cultural aspects. So maybe we got some few questions from our audience, but as a moderator, I will take this privilege to ask a few questions before taking the question from our audience. So the first question that I'm going to ask is more starting point of the research methodology is like, would you mind to tell us a little bit more in terms of how did you select the 3 villages as your study site, and also how did you select your participants?
Thank you, Samadi, for the interest, and thank you for the questions. I will answer first to how I select the 3 villages. So I think at the time of COVID-19, it's quite, make it more difficult to go to the village without prior connection. So So at first I start with one village, which I have some prior connections to that through my supervisors. And then when staying there in the province for a little bit longer, I make more connections. And then I was looking for the village who are holding communal land titles and who were facing difficult, because the one of the objective of the research was to be able to observe what happened when people could not repay the debt, and what is this encounter like between the credit officers, microfinance and bank agent, and borrower who's struggling to repay the debt. So I was trying to, like, while I was in Ratanakiri, trying to seek advice from different people, and they recommend me to the second village where they have holding the communal land titles, and they were facing difficulty in repaying the debts. And for the third village, I also like want to include one village that has more, like, I think, like, better deal with the debts, like. And then I was introduced to the third village, was known as they were seem to be doing better with the debt. So I want to also see why other is doing better and why other is not. But the third village that I was there was this still at the early stage of the exposures to the debt. So yeah. And for the participants, so when I'm in the village, there will be someone like will assist me who can speak. If I'm in Tumpuan village, I will have someone who from the village who can speak both Khmer and Tumpuan fluently to accompany me, and we will stroll around and try to talk to anyone who give us time to talk with. So yeah.
Would you proceed for addressing to the first question? I will have one more question, and then we can jump to the question from our audience on Zoom. So the second question is also in the research methodology. Like, can you share with us some of your reflection and thought about what was like to conduct field work among distressed population? In your case, household were being pressured to sell their belonging and property to repay the debt or not?
Thank you. I think I mentioned a little bit in the presentations. It was difficult, of course, and especially as your role as a researcher, because I think sometimes people expect you to do more, but you couldn't do more and expect like you to be able to help more with the situation, but it's difficult. But the thing is, I felt sorry for both borrowers and credit officers when I was there, seeing them sitting awaiting at the house, and like were also in distress because they couldn't collect the debt as expected. And I just thought, why, like system-wide, how can we not be able to do things better than this? A system that would allow it a bit easier for the credit officer to perform the job, instead of there's like no mechanism for them to offer to the borrowers when they were struggling to repay, and all they could do was to persistently collect the debt in whatever they can. Yeah. So I was stuck in the distress. Yeah. And feel frustrated and feel hopeless and useless sometimes. Yeah.
Thank you, Percy. So I will start picking up the first question from audience, and from Robin Narcissos. Sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. How are the Christian missionary trying to get indigenous households out of debt? Do they lend them money at the lower interest? I know that you also mentioned about the involvement of the Christian missionary in the debt assisting to the population. And probably you would like to add something more onto the presentation that you just presented about how are the Christian missionary trying to get indigenous household out of debt, like how they can help the indebted family.
So when I was there was this negotiation. So the thing, at first they collect the statistics of how many, like as a whole, what is the amount of debt, and then they trying to find a financial institution like a bank or who can buy off that debt. That was the first ideas, is to find a bank that could buy off that debt at a half of the current interest rate, because the current interest rate was it's like a big ranging. Some were 18, 16 or 12. So they were trying to get someone to buy off this debt at 7%. So 7 or 6%. But the negotiation didn't really successful, and the bank see it as more risky case. So of course they're not going to throw 200,000 into this investment. And the third part was, I think it was just the company, they're trying to run some financial literacy trainings with the community so that they can be, I think that the understanding of the debt was that people didn't know how to manage the money, or the concept of saving itself did not exist. So they're trying to install the concept of saving among the communities. And then they also acquire other resources like seek intervention from the National Bank of Cambodia or Cambodian Microfinance Association to come down and check to do the revaluations of the ability of people to repay, to stop giving the generic loan restructurings, because in Cambodia we have one policy which can allow people to, which allow the microfinance institution and bank to restructure the loan for the struggling borrower, but they just defer the principal amount, and this in the long run it's increased the cost of loan in itself, and many people already struggling to repay. So they cannot just, even if they just do this they just do this generic restructuring, they won't be able to make the economic situation better. So they ask for more substantial restructuring, like the restructuring of the interest rates.
I'm not quite, probably I missed some answer from you regarding to how the Christian missionary trying to get, like, to help with the indigenous people, because like in the presentation you also mentioned about like they ask the indebted household to sign the contract and to be Christian, and so it's like after all those process completed, it's like the Christian missionary will try to intervene with the bank or microfinance in order to delay the interest or something like that for the indebted household, or do they provide any loan to the household so that they can pay to the microfinance?
Yes, so what I touched a little bit in the presentation is the first step is you pledge an allegiance with the Christian God. you not necessarily convert to, or like not convert, like you don't need to enter Christianity. You just need to pledge an allegiance, but you can, it's up to the borrower afterward if they if they want to enter the Christianity or not. But the pledging allegiance was the initial step. And at the same time, they do all other stuff that I just talked about earlier. And they did not give, just to be clear, they did not give any loan to the community and the people. Yeah.
So connecting to this question, I will jump to the question from Dr. Lisa Ranson, who also asking related to the Christianity. So I will read the question. You mentioned several connections between Christianity and avoiding debt, like the missionaries speaking against it. Since the cash crop system reportedly affect the land spirit negatively, were there stories of the spirit being against debt, and did this influence people?
Were the stories
story of the spirit being against debt, and did this influence people? Maybe you can also open the Q&A box.
The second, right? No.
No, from Dr. Lisa Aronson. Scroll down a little bit.
Okay. You mentioned several connections between Christianity and avoiding debt, like the missionaries speaking against it. Since the cash crop system reportedly affect the land spirit negatively, were there a story of the spirit being against debt, and did this influence peoples? Well, that's very good questions. At the moment, I don't see any stories. I'm still like reviewing my data, so I will keep this question in mind, but at the moment I don't think any stories. Sorry, I just want to go back to the questions.
You may check in the answer because I moved to the answers already.
I moved to the answers.
Just click on the tab answer and then you will see the question from Dr. Lisa Ranson.
So yes, to answer shortly, I don't think I encounter any story of death and spirit yet.
Okay, so maybe I just continue to the next question from Sopat Pon. Do you find out the overlap loan among the informal and formal loan sources when the diagram to see it?
So in the, did I still share screen, somebody?
No.
Oh.
So his question is like the overlap loan among the informal and formal loan sources.
So, like, I just want to show the statistic in the village ones. Yes, the answer is yes. So in the village one, where the amount of the level of debt is really high, and at least at the time of my research, there were 15 people who identified themselves, and they were, according to what I have seen, they were struggling to meet the debt obligations. So 14 households I talked to has both loan from MFIs and also informal source. And if you look into details, the loan that they borrowed from the informal source was used to repay the debt with the MFI and bank loans. While in others, 2 villages is only a few that people have 2 loan, one, like not 2 loan, have taken out loan from MFI as well as from the formal source. So only in the village 1 in this study site that have the high levels of the borrowing from both sources. Yeah.
Thank you. So I may continue to the next question from Rosa Yi. Thank you for the presentation. Very fascinating. Indeed, I have a question. What are your observations of the changing cultural belief or way of life or living of the indigenous people have come into contact with such capitalist relation as microfinance and commodity production?
Well, one thing that I would like to illustrate would be the labor relations have changed. For example, have changed, but still some people are trying to, okay. So before people would do we call no dai or exchange hand or exchange hand where run through, for example, among the group would be run through the family group, they call crew, and among the charai would be mainly along the kul, like basically who share the same kitchen space. So the exchange hand would be done through this, and normally you give a few days of labors of to let's see, to wage the grass from this in the field, and then you will return a few days to do the same task of someone else's field. But now, since cash is the main medium of, cash is becoming important in the current way of living, and a need of cash to repay debt is even more urgent. So some has preferred to be paid in money instead of exchange the labor, but that doesn't really negate all dismiss all the practice of the exchange was still theirs. So I still see people with their grass cutting machines. They will offer each other's, like, I do your field for a few days and you do my field for a few days. Still theirs, but the paid wage labor is also there. So yeah, so it's like a mix. Yeah.
Okay, so you have anything else to add to this question, or should I move to the next question?
No, I think that's all.
Okay, so we have the next question from Supapon again. Like, thank you for your perfect presentation again. I have other question as following. He has several questions, so maybe I just read one by one and then you can address the first question. Like, do you have any comparison on microloan user between indigenous people and others?
I don't understand the questions. Like comparison between the loan side?
I think his question is between the indigenous and the other people, probably similar to the research that you conduct earlier a few years ago, that you did the research with the people like living in Siem Reap, Kampong Chhnang, and Battambang province, and what are the different the user in terms of like loan, indebtedness.
I think in terms of how people use loan, probably so much different, except in the highland, some people borrow the money to buy animals for the sacrifices, which yeah, of course, because it's governed by different system, I won't be able to see that in the lowland. But apart from that, I also see similar trends like borrowing to upgrade it, to access to updated services, like having more durable houses, to finance the agricultural activities like buying grass cutting or herbicides, which is like similar trend that I observed in Siem Reap and in Battambang and Kampong Chhnang. And I think sorry, I missed the point I want to. So the loan usage trend is quite similar. The way it's heading is quite similar. The amount of debt how it accumulates from one circle to the next circle is showing, yeah, similar trends. And the other thing that I found different is maybe genders. In the lowland, it's more like women who were more exposed to the credit officers, but in the highland, it's more men who were exposed to credit officers, because as I mentioned in my presentation, because they men throughout, even during the old day, they are more of the people who are dealing with outsiders, and so they can speak Khmer more fluently than women. So then they got more exposed to, yeah, credit officers, as compared to the lowland. It's more women who exposed to the credit officers. Yeah.
So we continue to the next questions. Have you seen the over-indebtedness among poor indigenous people and other people? This is a bit quite general, I would say.
In the first village, I think at least like 15 people, when looking at their debt, and just highlight with the one village that with the debt I have. So at least 15 people, and then you look at the source of income and the amount of debt, I don't know how they're gonna meet the monthly debt obligation. So yeah.
So we may have to move a little bit quicker because like there are many questions remaining. And he has another 2 questions remaining, but we'll try to read and you can answer briefly. The third question will be, will this rural credit help the poor in the same sample area? So you mean like in the 3 villages?
Well, I
So it's
think
like a positive sign from the loan.
I do also like keep an eye on the positive side. I think I'm very happy when I see cases that people were able to use the credit to get more land, to, yeah. But the way credit structures at the current moment, I felt, well, my statistics show that will be more exceptional cases, you know, like rather than it's heading to somewhere that's gonna create troubles for the household. Because if you look at, I would just touch on the interest rate, 18% or 15% or even like 10% is still high to use it to develop agriculture, you know. When I look at in detail in terms of, like in economic term, people borrow to invest, let's say, to develop rubbers. If they want to change the cashew to rubber, give more income compared to cashews, just to give an idea. If they want to convert a piece of land from cashew field to rubber they need to wait for 7 years. They can't wait for 7 years with the condition of the loan that they are having right now. So they can't really, I don't know how they're gonna upgrade, like bring themselves up with this current structures of the loan and the interest rate, and the fact that if you have difficulty, for example, meeting, like having, if it's like natural disaster affected your farm, there's a really like less supporting mechanism for those people, for the smallholders. Yeah.
So it looks like, based on your response, like the negative side from the loan is quite dominant.
Yeah, I think if credit can be useful, I think there's a lot of things that need to be restructured or reformed to match the need of the borrowers. Like these have to be reevaluated. And one of the example would be the interest rates. And the second would be the the durations of the loan and the conditions of the loan itself. At the moment, it didn't really match with the smallholder who want to, let's say, switch from one low income cash crop to a much higher. This is in an economic sense, yeah.
Thank you. I will go to the last question from Supapon, and also for your information to our audience who also interested in reading another research report by Pasi. There is also another one is microfinance during the COVID-19, which you can download the full report on CKS website. You can also check on our online catalog to read the detail, and then you will see what the research finding and some recommendation. So the first question from him would be like, based on your finding, you have used the descriptive statistic. Do you have any inferential statistic in your research?
With my primary data, no. I would have to base those on other existing research. For example, the newly current, there are like a few people who did like big sample size, like the one that done by the German funded one, Frank Bliss. I think he did like a national sample wise, and also, yeah, I would have to just use the secondary data for the statistical support, and also the recently publication done by the groups of researchers from the Royal Holloway University. They also look at a big sample size. I think that would not be a problem to seek the secondary data, which much a larger sample, because I didn't opt for the big household survey because that wasn't the point of this research and wasn't the objective of this research. So yeah.
Thank you. So we will move to the next audience, and with the question I will read like from Department Test Institute. So thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting research and with many interesting and novel elements. Regarding the background you mentioned and historical detail, what does it depend on whether people have decided to carry out community land titling or private land titling process?
I think, well, thank you for the questions. Change a little bit from microfinance to land. I think depending on how much they trust, how much trust they have in that community, especially how much can they trust those who were being appointed as the land committees, you know, like before, or identify as the leader of the process of having this communal land title, because there was a community where they don't feel like it's the, well, essentially it's the idea if you are having this communal land title, whether it's secure, whether it's a bit safe, and then if you don't trust the one who leads the process, or no one that you could trust to lead the process, then you can't really. I think that's the factor that shape whether that one factor that shape that whether they opt for individual or communals. And but in these last few years, I think microcredit has also played an important role, because there's a discourse going around the province which push, I think, trying to sabotage the communal land titling process itself, because they say that if you have the communal land titles, you won't be able to take out the loan from microfinance or bank. So people don't want to be cut off from that access, because life now has changed. They have come to depend on credit to finance different to finance their activities, from their ritual activity to their agricultural activity. If you tell people that, oh, if you have communal land title, you won't be able to get access to you won't be able to use your land as a collateral from the bank or microfinance. There was one case in Ratanakiri where they call off the communal land title because people believe that if they have the communal land title, they cannot get access to loan and credits. Yeah.
And he also has another question here, see, like regarding the debt collection process. If the person cannot pay, are there cases in which the rest of people in community support so that the person does not have to pay with the collateral, or is it more individual debt, individual payment?
Debt collection process. Another person cannot pay. Are there cases in which the rest of the community support? As so far as I know, haven't seen that yet. So mostly, like I said, although they have the communal land title, each actually have individual subtitle inside, which is not supposed to be the case, but it's in practice, everyone was also holding the individual titles in a form of individual title inside this common boundary. So when you are in debt, you're responsible for your debt, except there was one case where there was like two sisters. And yeah, it's more like she was helping her sister paid off the debt, one debt, but as a community collectively helping each other to pay the debt, I haven't seen that yet. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it so far as well. I think even in the mainland, I think we don't really, the lowland area, we don't see anything happen like this. So yeah, but it's good for the question. That's quite interesting. And we will move to the next question from Emsai. Do you observe any competition or contesting between local animism, spiritualism, and Christian believer to win more follower or maintain their follower? If you have, can you share a few examples?
Well, there's one. I didn't witness the tensions myself. I was told about these tensions. I think there was one case where a group of the Christian followers, they conduct some ceremony, and in the middle of the village, they have the communal house, they call Rome. And there where they celebrate some, if the ritual is to be celebrated collectively, they celebrate in the Rome. And there was one cases where the Christian follower was blowing the horn. Blowing the horn to when you are praying, and then they need to blow this horn to make the prayer even more heard. And this has been upset the enemies, those who are not Christian, and they said that the act of blowing the horn would expel the spirit from the Rome in itself, and this caused tension, a little bit of tension. But later on, when there were some Christian activities in the Rome again, and people were asked, can they blow the horn? And people rejected it, said no, by doing that, it will upset those who are not Christian followers. So instead of blowing horn, they just clap the hand instead. So yeah, so I think people were cautious of each other's belief in the village. And there was in the Terai village also Christian follower and non-Christian follower, where they trying to be careful not to offend each others, and to also integrate as much as they can the element between the animism and the Christian, so that they can continue to live with each other. Yeah.
So it is not like really competition to get more followers. I think it's more like they try to adapt to the culture, the local culture, and try to live together harmoniously, I would say.
Yeah, but it's the work of the missionaries is they try to make people see that to follow the path. So yeah.
Okay, so we will thank you for your response, and we'll move to Dr. Jenna Grant, the question link. Thank you, Percy, for sharing this important work. I have a couple of questions, but feel free to just pick one if there is not enough time. Yeah, we have 10 minutes left, and we'll try to go through all the questions. Could you say a bit more about the different actors? Were the loan agents from village, from another nearby village, from another part of Cambodia, were economic land concession part of the people like in this village, as an agent disposition, as employer, etc. So, few
Say a
questions.
little bit more about different actors for the loan agent from the village. So there are 3 villages of my study size. So I will start with the loan agent. One village, the loan agent was from the village, while the other 2 villages, the loan agent were not from the village. The loan agents were not from the same ethnic minority group. The loan agent was from other ethnic minority groups, and they communicate with each other in Khmer. And yeah, but they're from Ratanakiri. For the economic land concessions, so the 2 villages was affected by the economic land concessions. And it's also pretty much shaped their, I think, like have shrink their resource as well, because one village was, I think, the one mountain, that's how they describe one mountain or 2 mountains, and one grazing land was inside the economic land concession, and the case is still going on, and they try to get some compensations. So the case has been going on since 2014 until now, and they're still like negotiating. And when I was in the village, I was trying to get, they said they were on the finalizing stage, they were given the mountain back and the grazing field for the buffalo and cows. But the thing is, the tree are gone, and the animal who live there are gone. The wild animal who live there are already gone. So basically, now they just finalize on trying to get a compensation from this company, and their request was to build a road, communal house, which is bigger, and a road to get access to water, to the water source, and that they're still in the process of negotiating. And the company would say that was too much, because I think how many village was affected by this company was 17 village was affected by this company, while the other village, they were also affected by rubber concession company, different company. But when I was there, I think it was in 2007 or 2008, it was affected by this rubber plantation company, but as a community, they were able to push back the boundaries. So I think they didn't go through the formal procedures which is set up which is supported by the World Bank. So I think they push the boundary back by themselves. So this village ended up having a bigger piece of land and they are on the final process of the communal land title, but they still have some conflict. The fact that the land department didn't give them all the give them all the land according to the customary boundaries, but they have bigger land compared to the other village.
I think still have one more question.
An agent of these possessions. Well, sometimes the community members themselves was an agent of this possession as well. So how to say, so I think I described like this, the strategy of people, of the loan officer who have tried to collect the debt from the borrower, but I have seen the same thing with the formal provider. They was as fierce as credit officer as well, and they were also after the land. And there are also cases where the villages, even like from the same family groups, who would dispossess the land, but more like temporarily. For example, in this case, she had to repay the debt on behalf of her relative, and in exchange, she will collect the cashew nut for 8 years. So it's more like dispossess, but it's temporary. And if you have the money, you can negotiate to get it back, a piece of land, something like that. And just so in some words, so you have informal provider, you have economic land concessions, big company. It's like, so you have micro actors like who can dispossess even the land is already have the titles. So you have formal providers, you have people from the lowland who seek a piece of land to cultivate the crops, and then you have family members who are doing better than others. Now they have the capacity to buy the land with the help of the loan they get. So yeah.
So maybe just go to the next question from her, which will be the last question. Did you see any communal method of managing debt, or were that's mainly the problem of individual or household? Maybe just keep your answer short because we are running out of time as well.
Okay, I will try to make it short. So village 3, that's what I saw, and that's what I was drawn to, because they have this community saving, but they call it Lian Pong. It's like they collect the saving according to the clan, because in the Jurai as well as in Tumpuan, they divided by clan, and that's mostly how the mutual aid was mostly traditionally how the mutual aid is channeled through. So in this village 3, they were able to form a community saving based on clan, and then they start with like clan saving, then they move to youth, and they move to women saving. And for the clan saving is mainly used to cover I call it distress borrowing, when you borrow to repay for the healthcare costs. So basically this clan saving is mainly you can only access to this saving when you need the money to repay for example, you need to cover the delivery cost, because they live in isolated areas. It's quite costly for them to come from the village to the hospitals. So to cover the sickness. So I think that's how they try to manage with the debt, by establishing a pool of saving that can be used to cover the distress borrowing. So I think that was a brilliant initiative.
Thank you, firstly, for keeping it short. So it's like we are now 4:30, but I will read the final comment from one of our audience, like Mary Melak. Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation. It is very important to continue documenting the huge change occurring in highland around land. I'm sorry not to have time to discuss further. So I hope that we will have similar discussion in the future so that you can also join and we have more time to discuss on this issue. So thank you so much to our audience for joining us today, and thank you for over 10 questions to our presenter, and of course thank you to Percy for trying to address all the questions. And I would say that the presentation is very informative and this is very important issue, and we have learned a lot from the presentation today. And I will not forget to thank to my team who stay behind, who helped to set up all the technical stuff to keep this webinar runs very smoothly. And to our audience, with the link that I just sent to all of you on our chat, it is about the Khmer Language and Culture Program and Junior Resident Fellowship Program announcement, which we continue to accept the application until 30 March. So if you are interested or to learn more the detail of the program and the fellowship, please click on the link or check on our website for the detailed information. So on 10 February at 8:30 a.m. Cambodia time, we will have another webinar on Between Public and Power, a Colonial History of the National Library of Cambodia by Dr. Cindy Nguyen, CKAUS Fellow, and will be moderated by Dr. Steve Hedder. So for the detail of the announcement and register for the Zoom link, please go to CKA website as well. And to receive instant and constant update of CKA Fellowship Program and also webinar, please do not forget to subscribe on our website or follow us on all the social media like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn as well. You will receive the update information from us all the time. And last but not least, as always, stay safe and have a great day, great evening, and enjoy the coming weekend. See you again next time. Thank you so much to everyone who stayed with us until the end of the session. Thank you, Percy.
Thank you, Samdi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.